Hello, clinical case about masochism. Description. Some time ago, I received a young woman, Nadia, in her 20s, in a state of great distress following 3-week hospitalization in psychiatry. She had attempted suicide and now she was scarifying herself by injuring her thighs and belly with a razor. She was doing so to relieve the unbearable tension that she was permanently feeling. Nadia oftentimes remained practically silent during the entire session. She was silent for so long that I started wondering if psychoanalysis would be useful in her case. I turned to Lacan's and my own analytical experience, the one that shows that desire is sometimes so well hidden that it might seem absent for a while. However, the desire is there. It is not absent, it is repressed. One day I pointed out to her that psychoanalysis is a talk cure, that she was there so that to speak out, to say something. Then she replied that just being able to think calmly sitting next to me was already enough for her. Whenever Nadia was looking at me, her face was anxiously twisted. She was dressed carelessly and she was always holding her coat very tightly against her belly. I thought that there might be a link with the scarifications on her belly and that there is this space yet to be discovered. And I do not forget that any interrogation of the conscience concerning the desire as that which is able to fail can be only in complicity with another desire which oppresses it and which nevertheless unconsciously appropriates it. A quote: "Words are useless. I'd rather go to consult a neurologist. There must be something wrong with my brain." "Something wrong with your brain?" I asked. A quote: "I have read that the experiments conducted on the rats prove a lot of what I feel. Rats also get depressed." "But you are not a rat. I have never been practicing psychoanalysis with a rat," I tried to joke. A quote: "I prefer animals to humans. I feel that they understand me better. If I stay alive, this is only for my dog. I'm sure only he understands the truth." Then she brought a dream where she saw herself as a dog abandoned by her parents and brothers, like someone who doesn't matter. As she was revealing it, her voice was trembling with emotions. "Do you mean that your words have no weight for those who matter to you?" I asked her. She nodded, started crying, headed for the door and shut it even before I was able to say a word. Reason for hospitalization: suicidal attempts. She was regularly injuring her belly and thighs with the razor. Symptoms: anxiety, no desire of living, invading feeling of guilt. Anamnesis: mom was suffering from prolonged postpartum depression. Self-awareness: Nadia was completely unaware of why she was making the scars on her body, not to mention the necessity to see a psychotherapist. Request: she was unable to precise her trouble. She was telling me about her impossibility of taking decision. A quote: "I don't have taste for anything. Nothing is dear to me. Nothing interests me. I have no desire at all. I have nothing to lose anymore in this life." About family. In Nadia's words, her father was aggressive, he was considering her null and void and was always shouting at her. She recalled that her mother used to lock herself in Nadia's room for hours, even for several days, saying that she was desperate and disappointed by her daughter, who was an ugly little girl and didn't study well at school. So her father was punishing her severely for all her misdoings. A quote: "He asked me to console my mother. He claimed that I had to understand her disappointment and that she had suffered a lot when she was giving birth to me, and that the doctors would have done better if they had made her a cesarean section. My father asked me during the time of my mother's heavy depression caused by painful delivery to take my mother's place and to sleep in their bedroom since she was sleeping in mine. The situation worsened after the operation which Mom underwent on the womb. She became even more susceptible and violent. Then I was heavily beaten by my father. Whenever I said a word which he didn't like, I was receiving the blows. I don't understand why I am wounding myself today. I could not fail to point out to her that she was establishing a link between a word which she didn't like, the blows, and her scarifications, which a most important detail, she was making them on her belly. A quote, "Like a cesarean, then it means that I want to liberate my mother from her delivery sufferings." About the other, at one of our sessions, she said, a quote, "I have a tendency to find men who mistreat me. I have always wanted to escape the atmosphere of my family where everyone was disputing all the time, and I come back to it in my adult relations. I don't know how not to do it. Now I have a new boyfriend, we're constantly fighting, we're even fighting for no reason. It is the reconciliation which is beautiful. The sexual life resumes afterwards. But how can I continue with someone who doesn't respect me?" We all know about the existence of sadomasochistic couple. A masochist will be always looking for a sadistic and aggressive partner which will allow the existence of an erogenous masochism. About relation to body. She was cutting her belly and thighs with the razor. Nadia's symptomatic manifestations of guilt for having caused sufferings to the mother's body was depicted on her body as an unpayable imaginary sacrificial debt which she was attempting to pay in order to repair a mother's body damaged by her fault. Lacan says that the anxiety is not the anxiety of the disappearance of desire, but that of what we do not know about the violent desire of the other. She was constantly anxious because she didn't know what this maternal, parental, transgenerational other wanted from her. About transfer. She remained more than skeptical about the work undertaken with me, mentioning that all the psychologists who she had already met were not able to help her. At the beginning, the analyst occupied the place of the one who represents the ideal of her subjective exteriority, that is to say, a space where she was able to see herself as someone good, that is, to whom she was able to say no, so that objectification became possible. About dreams. One of the dreams has already been mentioned earlier. Here is her other dream. There were children, boys, who wanted to attack her. It seemed to her that one of them was armed with a big stone. Clinical picture. Here we deal with a psychotic structure with deeply enrooted imaginary debt, guilt feeling, and deriving therefrom masochistic disorder. Freud discovered that guilt is one of the important sources of masochism. In 1924, he wrote that if pain and displeasure become goals and not just the warning signs, then the pleasure principle is paralyzed. He noted that in this case, the guardian of our psychic life is as if under the effect of a narcotic drug. Masochism can be detected in all structures. In the case of a brutal exercise of paternal masculine power, it can lead to the maintenance of masochistic tendencies in the phobic as in the hysterical and the obsessional structures. A primary erogenous masochism is inherent in our entering the world framed by language. For a baby, in order to be accepted by the world, he should consent to accept its constraints. As a human child, we accept to become speaking subjects, therefore we efface ourselves, we become objectified, modeled according to the desires of the people who take care of us. We must reject a part of us so that to exist. In Nadia's case, that forgotten masochistic part of herself, hidden in her unconscious, continued to act without her being aware of it. So, without her knowledge, it was governing her by ordering her to make this parental other assimilated in her in joy. She was threatened with the danger of losing love, parental, social, every time she was showing the slightest disobedience. One part of Nadia remained masochistic because of the inherent place of the death drive, which tended towards its satisfaction. The dress drive is present in any human desire. However, in Nadia's case, it was amplified fivefold. The other part of Nadia felt guilt. Guilt, or the imaginary debt, which consisted in satisfying the mother by making herself her object, her puppet. Nadia was pushed to get dissolved in a mortifying and enslaving desire which was not hers, in a desire which trapped her and made her suffer by preventing her from acting. This is a kind of suicidal attempt of desire. About analytical work. The work of an analysis consisted in releasing a desire trapped in the drive due to the lack of movement of phantasm. For the masochist, it is difficult to get rid of the demand to remain in the domain of the enjoyment in the real. Out of passivated and objectified object, she turned into a subject. The turning point for her was to appropriate her own decision, which was impossible before the analysis, since she had considered herself guilty under the cruel commandment of superego whenever she was attempting to act on her behalf. What helped? First of all, Nadia managed to discover her place of a subject and not be simply a mother's object, a phallus which is a mother lacking, a mother's puppet. Secondly, the discovery of her own desire, which was considered as absent because it was blocked. Thirdly, she liberated herself from the imaginary debt, which was not hers, the debt of having to satisfy the desire of the other who surpasses and objectifies her. She realized that she was not indebted to anyone. Changes which happened during the analysis. Obviously, the analysis helped her to get out of this passive place of object. She was able to accept, to speak about her own hatred of the feminine, therefore of her femininity too. However, the symptom did not disappear completely. In difficult and violent situations, which by the way occur in everyone's life, she was no longer cutting but violently pinching the skin of her belly, thus leaving the bruises. They are like bruises of the soul, she said to me. The analysis has been lasting for 3 years with intervals and is still ongoing. She is the one who told me that she needed to continue analytical work, a quote, "I have to come here to identify where this evil comes from, the evil which I receive and evil which I give. I don't see it clearly yet."